In the quiet solitude of his modest home, nestled at the edge of a sprawling forest, Ethan found himself staring out the window as twilight painted the sky in hues of amber and violet. The world outside seemed to hum with an unspoken anticipation, though he couldn't quite place why. It had been years since anything extraordinary had touched his life. Years spent tending to his small garden, reading books by candlelight, and wandering through the woods that bordered his property. He lived simply, contentedly, yet there was always a faint yearning within him for something more, something beyond the confines of this ordinary existence. The air shifted suddenly, carrying with it a strange warmth that prickled against his skin. A soft glow began to emanate from the clearing just beyond his fence, growing brighter with each passing second until it illuminated the trees like golden fireflies. Ethan froze, his heart pounding as he watched the light coalesce into a shimmering figure. She stepped forward, her form both ethereal and commanding, radiating an otherworldly beauty that left him breathless. Her skin shimmered faintly, like liquid starlight poured over marble, and her eyes held galaxies within them, swirling constellations that seemed to peer straight into his soul. Her presence was overwhelming, not merely because of her alien appearance but because of the aura she carried, a blend of regality and curiosity that made her seem impossibly ancient yet vibrantly alive. She wore garments that defied description, flowing fabrics that seemed woven from moonlight and shadow, shifting and rippling as though alive themselves. Around her neck hung an intricate pendant, pulsating gently with a rhythm that mirrored the beat of Ethan's own heart. He felt rooted to the spot, unable to move or speak as she approached, her steps silent despite the weight of her majesty. When she finally spoke, her voice was melodic, resonating deep within his chest as if it bypassed his ears entirely. "You are human," she said, her words neither question nor statement but something in between. There was no malice in her tone, only a profound interest that bordered on reverence. Ethan swallowed hard, his throat dry as sandpaper, and managed to nod. "Yes," he croaked, his voice barely audible even to himself. She tilted her head slightly, studying him with those endless, cosmic eyes. "I have traveled far to find one such as you," she continued, her gaze never wavering. "Among my kind, tales of humanity are whispered with awe. Your fragility, your resilience, your capacity for emotion, it fascinates us." She paused then, her expression unreadable, before adding softly, "And now I stand before you, wishing to understand what it means to be human." Ethan's mind raced, struggling to process her words. Why would someone, or something, like her care about humans? What could she possibly hope to gain from speaking with him, a man who had done nothing remarkable with his life? Yet, as she waited patiently for his response, he realized she wasn't asking for permission. She was extending an invitation, one he didn't fully comprehend but couldn't bring himself to refuse. I don't know where to begin," he admitted hesitantly, his voice trembling. "There's so much about being human that I don't even understand myself." A faint smile graced her lips, and for a moment, she looked almost vulnerable. "Then we shall discover together," she replied. "But first, tell me your name." "Ethan," he murmured, feeling strangely exposed as he offered it. "And I am Seraphine," she said, inclining her head slightly. "Queen of La Mora, though titles matter little here. For now, let us simply be two beings seeking understanding." As Seraphine stepped closer, Ethan instinctively took a step back, his pulse quickening. Her nearness was intoxicating, her scent a mixture of wildflowers and something indefinably alien that sent shivers down his spine. She noticed his reaction and halted, tilting her head again in that curious manner. "Do all humans respond to uncertainty with retreat?" she asked, her tone laced with genuine intrigue rather than judgment. "No," Ethan stammered, shaking his head. "It's just, you're not exactly what I expected when I imagined meeting someone. Not human, I mean." His cheeks flushed as he stumbled over his words, acutely aware of how clumsy he sounded. Seraphine's laughter was soft and musical, like wind chimes stirred by a gentle breeze. "Nor are you what I anticipated," she admitted, her gaze softening. "Your species is often described as volatile, unpredictable. Yet here you are, hesitant yet willing to engage. Tell me, Ethan, do you fear me?" The question caught him off guard. Fear wasn't the right word for what he felt, not entirely. There was awe, certainly, and a healthy dose of apprehension, But beneath it all lay a flicker of something else. Fascination. "I'm cautious," he replied carefully. "You're powerful, obviously. And different. But I don't think I'm afraid of you. Not really." Her expression shifted subtly, a glimmer of satisfaction crossing her features. "Good," she said simply. Then, after a pause, she added, "Come. Walk with me." Without waiting for his reply, she turned and moved toward the edge of the forest, her movements fluid and deliberate. Ethan hesitated only briefly before following, drawn by some inexplicable pull. As they walked side by side, the air around them seemed to hum with energy, as though the very earth recognized her presence. The trees loomed taller than usual, their leaves whispering secrets in the night breeze, and the stars above burned brighter, casting everything in a silvery glow. "So," Seraphine began after a while, breaking the silence, "what does it feel like to live as you do? To exist without the certainty of purpose, without the clarity of connection to something greater?" Ethan frowned, considering her question. "I suppose it feels incomplete sometimes. Humans spend so much of their lives searching for meaning, for love, for answers. We build these fragile systems of belief and structure, trying to make sense of things we can't control. But even when we fail, we keep going. Maybe that's what makes us human, the persistence, the hope." Seraphine nodded thoughtfully, her luminous eyes fixed on the path ahead. "Hope," she repeated, as though tasting the word. "An intangible force that drives action. Fascinating. My people rely on logic, on patterns and equations. Hope is foreign to us." They reached a small clearing bathed in moonlight, and Seraphine stopped, turning to face him. "And love?" she asked, her voice softer now, almost tentative. "What is it like to love another?" Ethan blinked, taken aback by the sudden intimacy of the question. Love was such a vast, complicated concept. How could he possibly distill it into words? "It's messy," he said finally, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's wanting someone to be happy, even if it hurts you. It's trusting them, even when you're scared. It's seeing the worst parts of them and still choosing to stay." For a long moment, Seraphine said nothing, her expression unreadable. Then, unexpectedly, she reached out and placed a hand on his arm. Her touch was cool but not unpleasant, sending a jolt of electricity coursing through him. "Show me," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "what it feels like to connect, to truly connect, with another." Before Ethan could respond, the world around them seemed to blur and shift. Colors swirled, sounds faded, and suddenly they were no longer in the forest but standing in the middle of a vast, crystalline chamber. The walls shimmered with iridescent hues, reflecting light in ways that defied natural laws. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, upon which rested a glowing orb that pulsed with rhythmic intensity. "This is my sanctum," Seraphine explained, releasing his arm and gesturing to their surroundings. "Here, thoughts become tangible, emotions take shape. If you wish to show me what it means to connect, this is where it must happen." Ethan stared at the orb, his chest tightening with a mix of excitement and dread. "How?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Place your hand upon it," she instructed, stepping back to give him space. "Let your memories flow freely. Show me what it means to be human." Hesitant but unable to resist, Ethan approached the pedestal and laid his palm against the orb's smooth surface. Instantly, images flooded his mind, fragments of his past, moments of joy and sorrow, love and loss. He saw his mother's smile, felt the warmth of her embrace. He relived the ache of his father's absence, the loneliness of childhood nights spent staring at the stars. He remembered fleeting romances, friendships forged and broken, dreams pursued and abandoned. Each memory surged forth, spilling into the orb and filling the chamber with vivid, swirling colors. Seraphine watched silently, her eyes wide with wonder as the room transformed around them. Scenes played out in the air like living paintings, laughter echoing from unseen voices, tears glistening on invisible cheeks. She reached out tentatively, brushing her fingers against one of the floating images, and gasped softly as she felt its weight, its depth. "This," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. "This is what it means to be human. To carry so much within you, to endure such complexity. It is beautiful and heartbreaking. Ethan lowered his hand, breathing heavily as the visions faded, leaving the chamber dimmer but no less charged with energy. He turned to Seraphine, finding her staring at him with an expression he couldn't quite decipher. "Was that enough?" he asked quietly. She shook her head slowly. "No," she replied. "It was only the beginning." The air between them grew heavy, charged with an unspoken tension that neither dared to break. Ethan could feel the weight of Seraphine's gaze, piercing through him as though she sought to unravel every secret buried within his soul. Her proximity was intoxicating, her presence both comforting and unnerving in equal measure. He wanted to look away, to shield himself from the intensity of her scrutiny, but found he couldn't. Her eyes held him captive, demanding honesty he wasn't sure he was ready to give. "You hesitate," she observed, her voice low and measured. "Why?" Ethan swallowed hard, his throat dry. "Because I don't know what you want from me," he admitted. "You've seen my memories, felt my emotions. What more could there be?" Seraphine tilted her head, her expression thoughtful. "Memories are static," she said. "They are echoes of what has been, not the essence of what is. I wish to experience humanity, not as a spectator, but as a participant. To feel what you feel, to live as you live." Her words sent a ripple of unease through him. "That's not possible," he countered quickly. You're not human. You can't just—" "Cannot," she interrupted, her tone sharpening slightly. "Or will not. Do you doubt my ability, or do you fear what it might reveal?" Ethan faltered, unsure how to respond. The truth was, he did fear it, not because he doubted her capabilities, but because he feared losing himself in the process. What would it mean to share something so deeply personal with someone so fundamentally different? Would she understand, or would she consume it, leaving nothing behind? Seraphine seemed to sense his turmoil, her demeanor softening. "I do not seek to harm you, Ethan," she assured him. "Nor do I wish to diminish your humanity. Quite the opposite, I wish to honor it. But to do so, I must go deeper than memory, further than observation. I must immerse myself." Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Ethan's mind raced, grappling with the enormity of what she was suggesting. Immersion, connection, vulnerability. It was terrifying, and yet, somehow, it also felt inevitable. As though fate itself had conspired to bring them together for this singular purpose. "What would that entail?" he asked cautiously, his voice barely above a whisper. Seraphine stepped closer, closing the distance between them until they were mere inches apart. "A joining," she replied, her breath warm against his skin. "A merging of minds, of hearts. For a time, we would become one, not physically, but spiritually. I would see through your eyes, feel through your senses, live through your experiences. And you would glimpse mine." The idea was staggering, almost incomprehensible. To share his innermost self with another, to open himself completely, without reservation or defense, was something he had never done, not even with those closest to him. Yet, as he met Seraphine's gaze, he realized she was offering him the same. This queen of an alien realm, this being of unimaginable power and wisdom, was willing to lower her barriers, to expose her own vulnerabilities, if only he would meet her halfway. "I don't know if I can," he confessed, his voice trembling. "It's too much. Too intimate." "It is indeed intimate," she agreed, her tone gentle but firm. "But intimacy is the foundation of understanding. Without it, we remain strangers, forever separated by our differences. Is that what you desire, Ethan? To remain apart?" Her question struck a chord deep within him, stirring emotions he had long suppressed. Loneliness. Longing. The ache of isolation that had followed him throughout his life, even amidst the comfort of familiarity. He had built walls around himself, convinced they were necessary for survival. But now, faced with the possibility of tearing them down, he wondered if they had ever truly protected him, or if they had only kept him trapped. "I'm scared," he admitted, his voice cracking under the weight of his confession. "Scared of what you'll see." Scared of what I'll feel. Seraphine reached out, her hand hovering inches from his cheek before finally resting there. Her touch was cool but reassuring, grounding him in the present moment. Fear is natural, she said softly, but it should not dictate your choices. Trust me, Ethan. Let me show you that vulnerability is not weakness, it is strength. Her words resonated within him, igniting a spark of resolve he hadn't known existed. Slowly, hesitantly, he nodded. Okay, he whispered. Let's do it. A flicker of relief passed over Seraphine's features, though it was quickly replaced by solemn determination. Then prepare yourself, she said, stepping back slightly. This will not be easy. But I promise you, it will be worth it. With that, she raised her hands, palms facing outward, and closed her eyes. The air around them began to shimmer, vibrating with an energy that made Ethan's skin prickle. He felt a strange pull, as though invisible threads were wrapping around him, drawing him closer to her. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat reverberating through his entire body. Breathe, Seraphine instructed, her voice steady despite the chaos swirling around them. Focus on my presence. Let go of your doubts, your fears. Allow yourself to be open. Ethan obeyed, taking slow, deliberate breaths as he tried to calm his racing mind. The world around him blurred, fading into a haze of light and color. All that remained was Seraphine, her form glowing brighter with each passing second. He felt her reaching out to him, not with physical touch but with something far deeper, an invitation to surrender, to trust. And then, with a surge of energy that knocked the breath from his lungs, they connected. The sensation was indescribable, a tidal wave of emotion and sensation crashing over him all at once. He was no longer Ethan, not entirely. Nor was he Seraphine. Instead, he existed somewhere in between, suspended in a liminal space where their identities merged and intertwined. Memories flooded his consciousness, not just his own, but hers as well. Visions of alien landscapes stretched before him, cities made of crystal and light, skies ablaze with twin suns. He felt the weight of centuries pressing down on him, the burden of leadership and responsibility that came with being a queen. He saw her triumphs, her failures, her moments of doubt and despair. And through it all, he felt her longing, a deep, aching yearning for something she could not name. At the same time, he became acutely aware of himself as she perceived him. His flaws, his insecurities, his hidden desires, all laid bare for her to see. Yet instead of judgment, he felt only compassion, a tender understanding that brought tears to his eyes. She saw him not as he feared he was, but as he truly was. Flawed, yes, but also capable of great love, great courage. Their connection deepened, transcending thought and emotion to encompass pure sensation. He felt the rhythm of her heartbeat syncing with his own, their pulses becoming one. He tasted her essence on his tongue, sweet and sharp, like sunlight filtered through rain. He smelled her scent, a mingling of starlight and earth, ancient and eternal. Every fiber of his being screamed in protest at the intensity of it, yet he clung to the experience, unwilling to let go. Through it all, Seraphine guided him, her presence a steady anchor amidst the storm. Feel it, she urged, her voice resonating within his mind. Embrace it. This is what it means to truly connect, to know another as deeply as you know yourself. Ethan wanted to respond, to tell her that he understood, but words failed him. Language was insufficient to capture the magnitude of what he was experiencing. Instead, he focused on the sensations, letting them wash over him until he felt as though he might dissolve entirely. Time lost all meaning. Minutes stretched into hours, hours into eternity. They floated together in that shared space, exploring the depths of each other's souls, uncovering truths that neither had dared to confront alone. And as they did, something remarkable began to happen. The boundaries between them began to blur. Ethan could no longer distinguish where he ended and Seraphine began. They were two halves of a whole, complementary forces drawn together by an irresistible magnetism. Yet even as the connection deepened, a shadow lingered at the edges of Ethan's awareness, a faint dissonance that gnawed at the edges of their unity. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it grew stronger with each passing moment, tugging at the fabric of their bond. He tried to ignore it, to focus on the beauty of their shared experience, but it persisted, refusing to be dismissed. "What is that?" he asked finally, his mental voice trembling with uncertainty. Seraphine hesitated, her presence faltering slightly. "A barrier," she admitted reluctantly. "Something within you resists complete surrender. A part of you fears losing yourself entirely." Ethan recoiled instinctively, the realization hitting him like a blow. She was right, he had held back, however unconsciously. Despite his willingness to open himself to her, a fragment of his identity remained guarded, clinging stubbornly to the notion of separateness. It wasn't distrust, not exactly, but rather a primal instinct to preserve his individuality. "I didn't mean to," he began, guilt washing over him. "You need not apologize," Seraphine interrupted, her tone soothing despite the tension underlying her words. "Resistance is natural, especially when faced with such profound vulnerability. But if we are to achieve true connection, you must let go completely. Can you do that, Ethan? Can you trust me enough to surrender entirely?" Her question hung in the void between them, heavy with expectation. Ethan wrestled with his doubts, torn between the desire to merge fully with her and the fear of disappearing altogether. Could he risk it? Could he abandon the last vestiges of his autonomy for the sake of unity? As the moments stretched on, the answer became clear. He had come this far, opened himself in ways he never thought possible. To turn back now would be to deny not only her but also himself. With a final, shuddering breath, he released his hold on the fragment of resistance, allowing it to dissolve into the ether. The effect was immediate. The dissonance vanished, replaced by a harmony so profound it brought tears to his eyes. Their connection deepened further, transcending even the boundaries of thought and emotion. They were no longer two beings joined, they were one entity, indivisible and infinite. And in that moment, Ethan understood. Connection wasn't about losing oneself, it was about expanding, growing beyond the limitations of individuality to embrace something greater. Through Seraphine, he glimpsed the vastness of existence, the interconnectedness of all things. And through him, she experienced the raw, unfiltered beauty of humanity, the fragility, the resilience, the boundless capacity for love. But even as they reveled in their newfound unity, a question lingered, whispered softly in the recesses of their shared consciousness. What happens when the connection ends? Will they return to their separate selves unchanged, or will the experience leave an indelible mark on both their souls? Only time would tell. As the connection between them deepened, Ethan found himself submerged in a kaleidoscope of sensations and emotions, each more intense than the last. He could feel Seraphine's ancient wisdom flowing through him, a river of knowledge that spanned eons, yet it was tempered by her vulnerability, her own yearnings and fears. In turn, she absorbed his human frailties, the fleeting joys and sorrows that marked his existence. Together, they navigated this shared consciousness, learning and growing in ways neither had anticipated. One particularly poignant memory surfaced from Ethan's past, a summer evening spent with his late grandmother, sitting on the porch as fireflies danced around them. He had been just a boy then, full of questions about the universe, and she had answered with simple, heartfelt truths that stayed with him throughout his life. Now, as Seraphine experienced this memory, she felt the warmth of the setting sun on her skin, heard the soft rustle of leaves, and sensed the profound love that had passed between them. It was a revelation to her, a glimpse into the quiet, enduring bonds that humans formed, often unnoticed by the grand sweep of cosmic events. In return, Ethan was drawn into one of Seraphine's memories, a ceremony on her home planet, where she had been crowned queen. The scene was breathtaking, with towering spires of crystal catching the light of twin suns, casting rainbows across the gathered crowd. He felt the weight of her crown as it was placed upon her head, the collective hopes and expectations of her people settling onto her shoulders. Yet, amidst the splendor, he sensed her isolation, the burden of leadership that left her yearning for genuine connection, a sentiment that resonated deeply with his own feelings of solitude. These exchanges were not without their challenges. There were moments when the intensity of shared emotions threatened to overwhelm them. Ethan struggled with the sheer scale of Seraphine's responsibilities, the countless decisions that affected entire civilizations. He felt her moments of doubt, her fears of failure, and the crushing loneliness that came with being a leader among her kind. Seraphine, in turn, grappled with the ephemeral nature of human life, the brevity of joy and the inevitability of loss. Each tear shed, each farewell spoken, echoed through her being, leaving her awestruck by the courage required to live fully knowing that everything must end. Despite these trials, their bond grew stronger. They learned to navigate each other's inner worlds with increasing ease, finding solace in the shared understanding that emerged. Ethan taught Seraphine the value of small, everyday moments, the comfort of a warm cup of tea, the laughter shared with friends, the simple pleasure of watching the sunrise. These seemingly mundane experiences were revelations to her, highlighting the beauty in transient, fleeting instants that she had previously overlooked. Seraphine, in her turn, showed Ethan the wonders of the cosmos, the intricate dance of planets and stars, the symphony of creation that played out across the universe. She introduced him to concepts beyond human comprehension, ideas that stretched the limits of his imagination. Through her eyes, he saw the interconnectedness of all things, the delicate balance that sustained life across galaxies. This expanded perspective filled him with a sense of awe and humility, making him acutely aware of his place in the vast tapestry of existence. As they continued to explore each other's memories and emotions, a profound transformation began to take place. Ethan's initial fears of losing himself dissipated, replaced by a newfound confidence in his identity. He realized that sharing his essence with Seraphine did not diminish him. Rather, it enriched him, allowing him to see himself through her eyes and appreciate aspects of his character he had previously overlooked. Similarly, Seraphine found herself changed by the experience. The depth of human emotion, the raw authenticity of Ethan's spirit, awakened something within her, a longing for the simplicity and immediacy of human connections. Their journey through this shared consciousness was not linear. It ebbed and flowed like the tides, each wave bringing new insights and challenges. They laughed together at the absurdities of life, cried over losses both real and imagined, and marveled at the beauty of existence in all its forms. Through it all, their bond deepened, becoming a living, breathing entity that transcended the boundaries of their individual selves. Yet, even as they reveled in this profound connection, a lingering question remained. How would they navigate the return to their separate realities? The thought of severing this bond, of returning to their solitary existences, filled them both with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. Would they emerge from this experience unchanged, or would the echoes of their shared journey continue to resonate within them, shaping their futures in unforeseen ways? For now, they chose to dwell in the present, savoring each moment of their union, knowing that whatever lay ahead, they had forged a connection that transcended the limitations of time and space. Together, they stood on the precipice of discovery, ready to embrace whatever the future held, armed with the knowledge and understanding they had gained from each other. As the connection between them began to wane, Ethan felt a profound sense of loss looming on the horizon. The vibrant tapestry of shared memories and emotions that had enveloped them was slowly unraveling, thread by thread, leaving behind a stark emptiness. He clung to the remnants of their bond, desperate to hold on to the unity they had achieved, but the inevitable separation loomed large, casting a shadow over their shared consciousness. Seraphine, sensing his distress, reached out with a tenderness that transcended their fading link. "Ethan," her voice resonated softly within his mind, "our time together has been a gift, but gifts are meant to be cherished, not clung to. We must return to our worlds, but the essence of what we have shared will remain with us." Her words provided little comfort. Ethan feared that once the connection was severed, the profound understanding and intimacy they had cultivated would dissipate like mist under the morning sun. He worried that the lessons learned and the emotions felt would fade, leaving him adrift in a sea of longing for something he could never fully recapture. "Will I remember?" he asked, his mental voice tinged with desperation. "Will I remember how it felt to be so completely understood, so utterly connected?" "You will," Seraphine assured him, though her own emotions betrayed a similar apprehension. "Our bond has altered us both. The memories may soften with time, but the impact will linger, shaping us in ways we cannot yet comprehend." As the last threads of their connection unraveled, Ethan was thrust back into his solitary existence. The familiar walls of his home surrounded him, yet they felt foreign, the silence oppressive. He sat on the edge of his bed, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The warmth of Seraphine's presence was gone, replaced by an aching void that no amount of rationalization could fill. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan struggled to adjust to life without the profound connection he had shared with Seraphine. Simple tasks felt hollow, conversations lacked depth, and the world seemed muted, drained of the vibrancy he had come to associate with their union. He found himself revisiting the memories of their time together, clinging to them like a lifeline, hoping to recapture even a fraction of the understanding and closeness they had achieved. Yet, amidst the struggle, subtle changes began to manifest. Ethan noticed a newfound empathy in his interactions with others, a deeper appreciation for the fleeting moments of connection that punctuated daily life. He approached relationships with a renewed openness, willing to embrace vulnerability in ways he had previously shied away from. The lessons learned from Seraphine, the value of intimacy, the courage to be truly seen, had taken root within him, guiding his actions and shaping his worldview. Seraphine, too, found herself altered by their shared journey. Back on her home planet, she navigated her duties with a fresh perspective, informed by the human experiences she had absorbed. The burdens of leadership, once isolating, now carried a different weight, tempered by the understanding that even the most powerful beings were not immune to the universal need for connection. She implemented changes within her realm, fostering environments that encouraged openness and empathy, inspired by the simple yet profound truths she had gleaned from Ethan's memories. Despite the distance that separated them, a lingering sense of connection persisted. Ethan often found himself gazing at the stars, wondering if Seraphine was doing the same, if their thoughts ever aligned across the vast expanse of space. He wrote letters to her in his mind, pouring out his thoughts and feelings, hoping that somehow, someway, they would reach her. On La Mora, Seraphine stood on the balcony of her palace, her eyes fixed on the distant constellations. She felt a faint echo of Ethan's presence, a whisper of his spirit that reassured her he was thinking of her too. Though they were apart, the bond they had forged remained a beacon, guiding them through the complexities of their respective lives. Yet, as time marched on, doubts crept in. Would they ever meet again? Could their connection withstand the test of time and distance? The uncertainty gnawed at them both, fueling a quiet desperation to find a way back to each other. Ethan pored over ancient texts and scientific theories, searching for any clue that might bridge the gap between their worlds. Seraphine consulted her advisors and scholars, exploring every avenue that might lead her back to the human who had changed her so profoundly. Their efforts were met with obstacles and setbacks, each failure deepening the ache of separation. Yet, through it all, a stubborn hope persisted. They had shared something rare and extraordinary, a connection that transcended the boundaries of species and space. Surely, such a bond could not be extinguished so easily. And so, they continued to search, driven by the unyielding belief that their paths would cross again. Whether through fate or sheer determination, they vowed to reunite, to rekindle the flame of understanding and intimacy that had illuminated their lives. Until that day came, they carried the memory of their connection like a sacred torch, lighting their way through the darkness of separation, holding on to the promise of a future where they could be together once more. One fateful night, as Ethan gazed at the stars, a familiar warmth enveloped him. Seraphine's voice resonated in his mind, soft but certain, "I've found you." In an instant, she materialized before him, her luminous form as breathtaking as he remembered. Tears welled in his eyes as he reached out, half expecting her to vanish like a dream. "I couldn't stay away," she admitted, her voice trembling with emotion. "Our bond is stronger than time or space." Ethan pulled her close, their connection reigniting with a surge of familiarity and longing. For the first time in months, he felt whole again. Together, they vowed never to let distance separate them, forging a new path where their worlds could intertwine. As they stood beneath the starlit sky, human and alien, their hearts beat as one, a testament to love's infinite possibilities. And so, their story began anew, not as two solitary souls, but as partners united by an unbreakable bond. The universe had brought them together once. It would not tear them apart again. Hand in hand, they stepped into the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For in each other, they had found not just a mate, but a home.